We are very, very excited to take a look and peek inside the studio of Manuelita Brown. Manuelita Brown has been a partner of UCSD Retirement Association for some time. She exhibited with us in our first art show we did out on the lawn when we were doing it that way, when we were all able to come together and we were able to enjoy her art. Of course, her art is at UCSD, but before that, let me give you a little bit of background. Manuelita earned a BS in mathematics from Oregon State University in 1962 and a teaching credential in secondary level mathematics in 66. She added to that an MS in psychology from the University of California, San Diego in 76. She retired from teaching in 2000 to pursue sculpting full-time. Having spent decades as a wife, mother, and teacher of mathematics, Manuelita Brown is endowed with an exceptional understanding of the universal human experience. Specializing in bronze, figurative, and portrait sculpture, Manuelita has completed countless private, corporate, and public commissions, including, of course, the Triton, the 8-foot rendering of the Messenger of the Sea on our campus, as well as a life-size statue of Sojourner Truth and a bust of Justice Thurgood Marshall, which both embellish the Thurgood Marshall College, also here at UCSD. A warm welcome now for Manuelita Brown.
Good morning. And
Good morning.
Well, I suppose I should let you know that my studio is I call it a working studio, not fit for human consumption outside of me, but I've taken a few images to show you what it's like. And so I'm curious. I'm also experiencing what's going on. Now I need to share screen first. Okay, and it was helpful to get me started to see what I was supposed to be doing. Does everyone see now?
It's perfect. You are up online, you bet.
Very good. So the studio itself is the sort of thing it takes me weeks to clean up if someone were actually going to come in. But here we're welcoming you in. And you can see looks like today. This morning, you can see exactly why it's something that I couldn't invite very many people in at the same time. So what I'm going to do today to help you understand what I do is show you from beginning to end sculpture that if campus you have probably seen. It's the Sojourner Truth. So unfortunately, I hope it's not going to happen. We'll start at the beginning. Back in 2000, I did a maquette and actually produced it in bronze. So then came the process of it up, which meant it needed a base to put it on. I had help with that. Good that I'm not afraid of mathematics because it required using algebra, a little simple algebra proportions to scale it up, model, which was 18 inches tall to 6 feet tall. And you can see up on the shelf a model that one of the models we were using. There was foam that we scavenged from around the place. And you see, here's the model we're actually measuring from. And then I work on the wax, the clay that goes on top of all that foam. requires a little manual labor. It helped that I did a lot of sewing too, sewing with copper wire and mesh, steel mesh. The clay is hot. I hot to heat it and then apply it wherever I want it. And it's then still somewhat malleable, but when you see me spreading it, it's because it's cooled. It's not cooled yet, still hot. We worked from the top down. Fabric dipped in glue and with a little sand on it to help the clay adhere to it. So that I wouldn't have to bend over all the way to the bottom to work on her skirt. I elevated her. A pneumatic device that I could use to elevate it. Then I could lower it, but I needed to get it off those wheels. I actually found my next door neighbor and passersby who helped us get it down off of that. And now it's down on its own support. When it's ready to move boundary, they came down to get it and it was too tall to put into the back of the truck, so they had to take it. She's cradled in a box and then it's rolled into the back of the car, of that trailer truck.
And you took the head off?
Yes. Otherwise, she wouldn't fit in the truck. You can see she's all the way to the top of the truck there. Anchored in so she wouldn't roll around. And off they go to Hawthorne, California, which is where the foundry that I'm using. Then there must be a mold, which is a silicone rubber that's placed on top of the clay. The blue flanges, because they're going to divide it into sections, they won't be able to do it all at one piece. And this is head. That silicone rubber is backed with a plaster. And that's after it's been off of the sculpture that I did. These are the pieces of the mold. This is what a whole section of those looks like. Those are not all mine. Back in the studio, I did detail work on the handbag. It's a little alcohol lamp that I'm using to heat my tools. This lady is at the foundry. She's adding these bright blue, red sprues. Those are channels for the bronze to through. And after all that's done, it's invested in a material that's, when it's fired, it's sort of like morning wear. It's ceramic silicone. The bronze is heated, and poured, and then once it's cool, all that has to be chipped off. There are some of the pieces not totally cleaned up, so I'll go up and check on the pieces. Then they're welded together. My job then is to make sure that they're going together in the right attitude, right position. So they're not sitting at the incorrect angles. So there you need working with the man who's doing the welding, putting all pieces together. The armature is a steel pipe that runs in, and it's connected in several places inside, comes out through the bending foot. I was very pleased that it was so well balanced, she would stand on her own without being attached to anything, jet plate. This gentleman is doing the patina. And then finding a site for it. And so part of my job is to work with the people who are preparing the site. These are all employed by the university. So my job was to get it to the site, but to help them in the preparation of the site. All of that is a concrete foundation, it will be. And then the men from the foundry brought her down, and they're preparing to install her. That's the whole crew for the installation. My job isn't done even until after the landscaping. So there I'm lining out where the path should be. And then the unveil. Fortunately, my family, 3 generations there, my mom, my son were there. So that's that particular segment.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
And
beautiful.
if there are questions about any part of that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
From the very beginning to the unveiling, how long did it take?
Well, I did that first. Let's stop this for a moment. I did that first sculpture in 2000. It was in response to a call for artists to do a sculpture for a community in Massachusetts. I was a runner-up for that competition. I had decided when I first did it, this sculpture, that she deserved to be done life-size, and I wanted to see it completed. It took me a while to firmly make my commitment to doing that, since I actually didn't do it till 15 years later, or close to that. But I decided that I would do it 6 feet tall. She was a 6 foot tall woman in any case. And so I would begin, and I thought, but I can't afford on my income to do this. So I decided to try Kickstarter, and we didn't make the goal. So I did that preferred Kickstarter, some of the other funding sources, because if you didn't raise enough money to complete the project, you didn't get any money. And I didn't want to take anyone's money if I wasn't going to finish the project. So I didn't make enough from Kickstarter to complete it, I decided, well, I still want to do this. So I sent an email to the people who had made pledges on Kickstarter that if they wanted to get started on it, even though I didn't make the full amount with Kickstarter, send me a check and I would start. I would get going on it. I was amazed. There came in totally from friends, family, people on Kickstarter that I didn't know, enough to get started. It was about $4,000. And that was enough to get me from the model to the scaled up version. Because the gentleman you saw in the picture had to be paid. I wasn't paid, he had to be paid. I couldn't use paying him. And after I got full clay model, I was concerned that I needed to get a mold made, because if there was a fire or even very, very, very hot day, that clay could actually get soft and distort or melt. It's an oil-based clay and it melts with heat. I borrowed from Dr. Brown, my husband, to get a mold made. In the meantime, he told Professor Mariscal about the sculpture and he came and saw it. And so I could pay my husband back because the university with Dr. Mariscal and Gary Matthews and the provost at that time was Professor Haas, and the chancellor all said it's a go, and as a location was a go. And so the university purchased it. They purchased Sojourner Truth for that space where it is now. My deal with the university was, if they invited everyone who made a contribution to get me started for the unveiling, then that part of the money would be credited to the sale. And so that was arranged. And in fact, I think I saw Carmel in the picture that was shown at the unveiling. And there were several other people from the campus, as well as people, my acquaintances outside of campus who were there. So the university got the sculpture for $4,000 less, because that's how much I had collected from other people. At the same time, got finished and got installed. I'm absolutely thrilled that my vision had come to life. She was full size, and I much preferred the sculpture that won from Massachusetts. Was a very accomplished sculptor, but again, he pictured her as an elderly woman, and I didn't want to see her pictured only as an elderly woman, because there had been a stamp and two major sculptures in which she was an elderly woman standing with her cane. And I think there's a third one as well in New York. But when she took off, changed her name from Isabella Baumfried to Sojourner Truth, and started her crusade, her campaign, she was like 35 years old. She wasn't an old woman. She was a young woman, and quite determined woman. And I wanted her pictured that way, at least somewhere. And I'm thrilled that she's on the UCSD campus. All told,
Manuelita,
it's a long time. Yes.
were you the model for, like, she looks so natural and calm and determined. Were you the model for her?
No, I was not the model. Actually, the person that I had as a model walked across the field with a wrap on so that I could catch the movement and everything. She was a tall young woman who was a graduate student in biology. And she donned in a briefcase and across the field there on Thurgood Marshall campus, where my not very, title is Haystacks. I don't know what name of the art piece is, but it's the big granite squares that are on the campus. She walked across there and I just kept photographing her until I found a pose that I thought I really liked in terms of the movement. It's
Beautiful flow, Manuelita. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And your name is
Right.
195.
Yeah, I don't know why it says that. I'm Pam Wright. So we worked at Marshall College together. And
I knew I recognized your voice.
it's just the flow of that sculpture is beautiful. Her movement, she is on her way.
Thank you. Thank you. That was what people would learn with that she wasn't going to be stopped.
No, she is determined.
Were there any other things in that part of the presentation that you have questions about? We could also go back if there's part of the process that you don't understand.
A question from Fran Shepard.
I'm sorry, I was looking and didn't hear all of your statement.
We have a question from Fran Shepard. Go ahead and unmute
Oh, I
yourself.
see the hand up. That's neat. Learning new every.
I just wanted to add that Marcy and I took a stroll by the new NTLLN last week, and we walked right by your statue and slowed down and read the plaque and admired it.
Thank you, Fran. Well, I'm going to show you some other sculptures that I've done, just so if I to start this in the middle, see where I'm going to start it. Okay. I want to share screen again. Forgive me for being a little slow at this. You're there with a blank screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. These are some sculptures that's not what I wanted to do. It's going to start at the beginning. That's not what I want either. You can only see a part of her. Well, you can see all of her, but you're seeing all the rest of the stuff on my screen, right?
Yeah, but we can zoom in. Everybody can use their two fingers to pinch and zoom in.
Okay. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a very early sculpture that I did. I did it all in wax. So there was casting was directly from wax. And some people have wondered whether or not sculpture, and if I ever do things with political statements. An awful lot of them have political statements, but often people don't recognize them. Looks like a very demure young woman, but she happens to be standing on blooming tulips. And she also has tulips that are pulled up by the bulb, not just off. The flower and the bulb is there. And the name of the piece is Mbokoro, which I learned from a friend who was from South Africa, that's the name of a stone that they used to grind meal, grind grain for the daily bread, so to speak. And that stone is never washed. It's just pristine clean. But I named it because this is representing a young woman, but at the same time, she is not enamored of tulips, which to me represented the Dutch culture that had taken over South Africa and was oppressing the people there. And so my thought was, she's pulling it out by the root. And that was about the same time that Mandela was being freed. This one I call America's Son. It's actually a portrait of my younger son when he was a bit younger. He now has gray hair and long dreads and a beard. But this was after he graduated from university, from UCSD. And I realized as I watched him traveling actually around the world, that he wasn't exactly my kid anymore. He was a product of this country. And he told us as he traveled that he didn't like a young Black kid. He felt like an American, because that's how people saw him when he was abroad. This piece is titled The Man. He is a nude man walking, no weapons, but that doesn't necessarily stop him from being killed. And I actually did this piece about the time there was a man who was a gardener. I don't know if he was from Mexico or Honduras or was American. He was killed Pacific Beach, and all he had with him was a gardening tool. I was pretty upset by that and all the subsequent killings of men and women by police. And so my question was, what does one have to do, walk the street naked in order for you not be considered a threat? This one is entitled It's Work. And at a time when we had several, politicians who were constantly talking about how hard they were working, and I don't think they'd ever broken a sweat in their lives. So that was that was sort of my statement about, if you really want to work hard, then let's show some results of your hard work. And this is a portrait of Tulita. She's now deceased. She died at 103. And I met her through a student's family when she was a survivor of the Tulsa race massacre that happened in 1901. Even though there were numerous court cases that the of that riot compensated, it never got out of Congress. And I think by now, since she died at 103, I don't think any of them ever received anything. But there are still some descendants who are trying to get compensated for the loss of property in Tulsa during that time. This one is called Boxed In, and I'm basically thinking about limitations that are placed on women. And sometimes we are boxed in because we are afraid to fight, and sometimes we're boxed in because we're constrained. But we have to decide what we're going to do about it. This is a 2020. It's gotten to be a bit more explicit, and the other pieces that I've done, and recognition for all the people who are protesting actually around. I did start about this in reference to Black Lives Matter, and the protests were in this country, but I usually have the TV on something while I'm working. It's just noise in the background most of the time. But what I learned was there were protests in Nigeria against the police. There were protests in Europe, not Southern Europe area. I can't think of the word right now. I want to say Belarus, but I'm not sure that's right. Something similar to that. There were protests because they didn't like their leader, and there were lots of protests. There are protests right now going on in Russia where people are marching in big numbers. There were protests that were women's marches, and they were all over the world, including, I learned, one in Antarctica. Women on a ship were protesting. They all went to march at one end of the boat on a specific day. So this is a recent one, and actually will be in a show titled Now, N-O-W, at the Oceanside Museum of Art.
Manuelita, are those gas masks on them?
No, just masks.
Oh, okay.
Like we have to wear when we go out to go shopping.
Right. The one on the image on the front almost looks like it could be symbolic of a gas mask.
Yeah, to be a mask. And the fist in the air representing solidarity is common in a lot of the marches, in a great many marches and protests. Another sculpture that I worked for a long time. This on what I'm pointing to now, you see my cursor, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this one is actually only about 10 inches tall. And I did this one some years ago. It has a great deal, seemed to have affected a lot of people, sold quite a few of them. I call it But by Grace. It actually was inspired by a woman that I saw begging in Italy when I was there. But I've always wanted to do her life size. And through the sale of the second Sojourner Truth, the second Sojourner Truth is in a private collection. The first one's at UC San Diego, but the second one's in a private collection up toward LA. And with funds that I earned from that sale, I decided to do But by Grace large. And now she is 5 feet tall, a little over 5 feet. And she will also be in the Oceanside Museum of Art. The reason I submitted it for this show is because of the number of people who are now either worried about shelter or where their next meal is coming from, and dependent upon the gifts of others to whether or not they can, their family, etc. And so when you think about these people as real people, not as some other that we have no responsibility to or for. Actually, the museum wants to put her out in front of the museum on Saturday. Next month, she should be there for a few months. Incidentally, that Now show is really an excellent show. The people who are in it are a group of 20 women, all in San Diego County artists. And all of their works are in response to the 2020 phenomenon, what our lives have been like during 2020. Most of them are painters. I think I and one other woman are sculptors, and there's one who worked fibers. The rest of them are painters, and the work is actually fantastic. Combination of abstract and realism. If you get the opportunity to see the show in person, if it's ever opened while the show is up, I hope you will go see it. If not, you will certainly be able to visit the show virtually.
Can you tell us what the dates are of the show?
The dates of the Now show are, where do they go up? It's March 1st, I think, to, I don't know, let me stop share the screen and I'll.
Oh, well, no, in the interest of time, I'll look for it while you're continuing.
Well, that was the list of the sequence of shows that I wanted you to, the sequence of sculptures that I wanted you to see today, but I'm still open for questions.
Okay. Absolutely beautiful works. Do any of our members have questions for Manuelita?
This is Roberta. Hello, Manuelita. I hope everything's well with you. I always enjoy being a witness to all the beautiful work that you do and the historical moments that you're capturing with your beautiful sculptures. I have a question. The one, I think it was called Not by Grace, the last one that you picked. I noticed that one of them didn't have as much detail. And I think that might have been the smaller one versus the one that's 5 feet tall. Is it because it's larger that you're able to put more detail? I noticed the sleeves and the basket had been, you could see the woven of the basket. Is that the
Exactly
situation?
right.
Or did you? Okay.
Yes, Roberta. There are not as many things that you want to do for a smaller one. You're mostly interested in catching the way the sculpture might feel to a person more than seeing every detail. When it's larger, you can put more details without losing that, I hope.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
One day I'll have the budget to be able to purchase a proper sculpture from you.
Okay, I don't buy that argument. Have the budget now, it's just how you use it. I have a young man now who wants to purchase a piece, and he says, okay, got this much money every month for the next 6 months, and that's the piece I want. And we are working with it. We've managed to do that with any who wants to own one of my sculptures, and I think a lot of us would do the same thing. Incidentally, Susan, that those dates are March 13th, August 1st. Now show at OMA.
Thank you. Can you talk about the experience of working with your hands in the clay and getting the shape, the face to be that exact representation of the expression you want?
Yes and no. It's a very difficult thing to express. I've spent a lot of time watching when I was being a teacher. What else are you going to do, right? I want to know what the students are thinking, what they're understanding me, whether they're not getting it. So I do a lot of watching expressions. Now, I know there might be tricks that some artists use to get certain representations, and I see a lot of I see people who are exaggerating expressions in order to communicate what they feel the person is trying to do. I have tried to be more subtle and pay more attention to very fine details. I recognize that most of the time, if someone is walking and you know that person, before you can even see their face, you know who it is. You've experienced that? Where if it's a person that you're familiar with, sometimes not even personally. The other day, I'm looking at the TV, and what else can you watch but the proceedings going on in Congress. And there's a man walking down the hall, his back toward us. I told my husband, I'll say, oh, that's McConnell. And you couldn't see his face, you couldn't see anything, but this man walking from the back. I'm not the only person who recognized who that was, because our brains pick up so many small details in posture and things. And so it's a matter of basically just trying to communicate to the clay what your brain is seeing. And I'm not sure how that happens. That's one of the reasons I decided to do psychology, because Don Norman was the person that I was working with. He was in the psychology department then. And they were working on how you solve problems, how the brain works. And I thought, hey, this might be an opportunity to figure all that out. You know, I keep telling the students, if you want to solve a problem, first you have to clearly define the problem, and then just sleep and don't worry about it. Your brain will figure it out. And that works so often that I wanted to know, well, maybe somebody knows how that works, but they didn't know, and I didn't know enough to help them know. So, you know, at the time I enjoyed the talk. I always enjoy learning, so I enjoyed being there, but I also decided this was not where I was going. So after I finished the master's level work, I decided, okay, I've had enough now. And the students who were completing their PhDs were going on to do things like surveys for the telephone company. And I said, oh, no, I prefer teaching.
Well,
I'm not going to do that.
You practice psychology through your art.
Well, I hope I've learned something that gets translated, yes.
Yeah. We have a question from member Gail Liu. Gail, go ahead.
Yes, Gail.
Thank you for showing your work and your insight of your inspiration. And while you were talking, I went to your website and looked at your portfolio. And I noticed each specific sculpture, you have a poem that is describing the sculpture. Can you tell me a little bit about the poem that is associated with each art piece?
Well, as you can tell, my process is a lengthy one. This is not a process where you can do one a day, you know, and keep going. So it usually takes months, weeks, and there are even some things in my studio that have been there for years and they're not finished yet. So usually these words come to me while I'm working on the piece. And if I'm smart and attentive, I'll write some of them down. Now, they don't all end up exactly the same way once I have finished it, but I think one of the first times when I thought of it as possibly being considered poetry was when I wrote the one about dreaming. And that one actually came out more to me like a poem. A lot of the others were more descriptive and still are, because that's all that occurred to me in the process of working on it. So it really is an outcropping process of working on the sculpture itself. I have absolutely no training in writing. I don't consider myself a very writer at all.
Manuelita, can you tell me if when you were either a child or a teenager, were you doing art? Were you making art even then?
Yes, indirectly. Well, no, not indirectly. I consider all of it art. first thing I can remember is having one of those dolls that had a cloth body and an apparatus embedded inside that if you tilted the doll one way or the other, it made a noise, like, you know, a cry sound. And please, I didn't like the cry sound. So I opened up her belly and took that out and then reshaped the body in a different and took some scraps of fabric from my code. S4. So that was one of the first experiences at shape, I'll call it. And so a few classes, the kind of one was art. High school, I took class, as almost everybody did. And that's when I first worked with clay that could fire. And in college, I did in the art department for as many as they would undertake. So I always did do some kind of art. When I wasn't doing art as sculpting with clay, I was knitting, sewing, making lamps and light, building a birdhouse, building 2 houses, remodeling 1 house, furniture, my kids' bedrooms, all of the things. I coined the term shape making. Just make things, take from one thing and make it into another shape. And that's what sculpting is for me. So I've always done some sort of sculpting.
Thank you. You know what's funny? They say that people are left brain or right brain, and often they ascribe mathematical skill and knowledge to one side and artistic expression and creativity to the other side. You seem to have it all in spades.
Well, I think we all have, we just aren't using it all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, in fact, I think half of my success as a math teacher was the ability to sometimes represent things in 3 dimensions for the students to see.
There was another question.
I was going to ask you, Manuelita, then how did you decide to be a math major?
It was fun.
Well, another language.
I went to college on a scholarship, and I wanted at that time to major in engineering. I thought I would be a civil engineer and build bridges. I'm really enamored with beautiful bridges. And there was no engineering department. So I had 2 choices, physics or math. And the physicists, if there are any physicists, I apologize. We're very strange looking people. From the faculty on to the students. And I thought, I'm not hanging out with those guys. There weren't any women at all there. And there at least was 1 female faculty member in the math department whose husband was a physicist, but nonetheless, she was in the math department. And so I decided, oh, math is fun, I'll do that.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions from our members? Seeing none, I hope they will all join me in thanking you, Manuelita. This was absolutely fabulous. I really appreciate that you did that entire walkthrough of the process of making Sojourner Truth come true on the UCSD campus. That was amazing to me to see that. And what a joy that must have been to actually have it unveiled and be there for all of us to enjoy. So thank you so very much for everything you've given, not only to UCSD, but to the world in your artistic expression. Thank you. Everybody join me in a warm thank you to Manuelita. All right.
And hello, Gail Geddes.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We're going to close this up now then. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.